All right, hello everyone. It's a little odd, I'm not looking anyone in the eye except the candidates, but I'm kind of used to that being a radio guy. My name is Jack Mitchell. I do the morning show on KLIN Radio. It's called Jack and Dave in the Morning, and we're on 1400 AM right here in Lincoln, 6 to 9 every morning. We'd love to have you listen to us. We love talking about politics and what's going on in the city of Lincoln. And I'm fortunate to have LIBA asked me to moderate today's debate for the Lincoln Independent Business Association. Good news is I've been watching a lot of debates on television lately, so I feel like I know how to do this after being a spectator a lot. So I'm very excited about this. As Kobe mentioned, the general public as well as the LIBA members were invited to attend today. We're not going to have any opening remarks for the candidates. Some of the ground rules that we've agreed to, each candidate may give 1.5 minutes of closing remarks. We drew numbers to see who goes first on the first question. We also drew numbers to see who goes first on closing remarks, and I'll let the candidates and you know about that order as we go along. Each candidate was allowed to distribute literature at the LIBA Luncheon today, and they may refer to this material and/or notes during the debates. But props, graphs, will not be able to use, no PowerPoints, nothing like that. It's just a reminder, no props on this. And the candidates may not ask questions of each other. Members of the media developed and will ask the questions today. A couple of men I've had the privilege of working with over my career in radio. We've got Charlie Brogan from KFOR Radio and Kevin Thomas from KLIN Radio, so let's give them a round of applause. Each question will have 1.5 minutes to answer each of them, and I'm going to be a pretty big stickler on the time because I know everybody's got to get back to work and keep the economy of Lincoln going. So candidates, just so you know, once you get to that 1.5 minute stop sign, if you don't stop, I will stop you. We'll have 30-second rebuttals though. You will get a chance to do that. However, any candidate may choose to pass that if they'd like to, and each candidate will get a chance to do that. I'm going to announce all of the candidates here, and so let's give them a round of applause for being here. Ms. Suzanne Geis, Republican. Democrat. Dr. Dale Michaels, Republican. Dr. Les Stride, Republican. And Mr. Dave Taggart, Independent. Good luck to all 5 of the Legislative District 25 candidates. And with that, we will get started. And our first question will be asked by Charlie Brogan.
Thank you. I'd like to have each of the 5 of you just go down and give us a description of yourselves politically, how you see yourself on the political spectrum.
All right, and based on the numbers, we'll start with Mr. Gordon.
Political spectrum.
Where do we get nice
I have worked with both sides of the... sorry.
There you go. Make sure to get on the mics. There you go.
You asked about the political spectrum and where I am on it. I think I'm fairly in the middle, but I work both sides. Whenever I have done anything collaborative or seeking middle ground, I have tried to figure out where the middle is and then work toward bringing others toward that middle. Common ground, agreement, if you will, and sometimes just general consensus on the issue.
All right, thank you. Mr. Taggart.
I'm an independent right now. I was formerly a Democrat, changed parties. I don't think either party really defines me. And I hope I'm like most people in this room where you might be conservative on one issue, but liberal on another, and there's many issues that I don't really know what the liberal or conservative standpoint on that issue is. So I'm an independent, and I want to serve all Nebraskans and not just a political party or a specific group. Every Nebraskan is important and deserves to be represented.
Dr. Michaels.
I would define myself as conservative, pro-life, pro-right of conscience, and pro-Nebraska.
And Ms. Geis.
I am a conservative. I am also pro-life. I am pretty much a conservative in the way I live, in the way I would legislate. I am for making sure that government is lean and efficient, and so I am definitely a conservative.
And Dr. Sprite.
Yeah, I would, first of all, describe myself as a fiscal conservative. I think that that's the mainstay of what I want to look at. But the other thing makes good laws. And what I see out there so often is people put up sound bites. They put up things that sound good to them at the time, but when you start digging them into policy. So when I start looking at bills, for example, one of the things that I look at is those fiscal notes that are in. Most people just read the bill. I actually read the fiscal notes. I need to understand exactly why the bill is there so that I can then act appropriately in that manner. So that's probably my core beliefs right there.
Okay. Given the nature of the question, I'm going to presume we don't have any rebuttal on any of those, so if all of you are all right, we'll move on to the next question. And that will be for Mr. Taggart to start, and we'll give that to Kevin Thomas from KLIN.
Thank you for being here, candidates. The seat that you're all seeking is currently held by Senator Kathy Campbell, who's championed, among many other things in the legislature, Medicaid expansion efforts over the last 4 years. If it doesn't pass this year in the legislature, likely it will be proposed again while you are in the legislature. So would you support efforts to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, and why or why not?
I strongly support the expanded Medicaid. There's 40 to 100,000 Nebraskans who currently don't qualify for Obamacare, or they're not covered under Medicaid. So we need to do something to protect those people and give them insurance. And some people say these aren't hardworking Nebraskans, but I personally am one of those Nebraskans that when I applied for Obamacare at the end of the year, and I didn't qualify, it would take at least $30,000 of income for me to qualify for Obamacare. And when you pay $2,000 a month for insurance premiums, you don't really have money left over if you're making less than $30,000. So we need to make sure every Nebraskan is protected and has a rate of insurance. And I support everything that Kathy Campbell's done for that. And if it doesn't pass this year, I will do everything I can to make sure that it does in the future.
Dr. Michaels.
I'm strongly in favor of medical care expansion. At the present time, I can't support Medicaid expansion, even though as a family physician, I've been taking care of Medicaid patients for 42 years. My concerns are that the costs are going to have to come out of my kids and my grandkids, because we're talking about spending money we don't have. We're talking about typically a program that gets bigger faster than we think it should. And so although I'm strongly in favor of trying to find a way, working with business and the community, to develop a program that will allow people to receive the medical care they need, I really can't support the Medicaid expansion as it exists, even though that probably will negatively affect me as a family physician. But I really think we have to do what's right for these patients and for the state.
Ms. Geist.
Even the state Medicaid director, Paul Lynch, stated that he thinks that LB 132 is ultimately not sustainable. And for that reason, I do not support the expansion of Medicaid. I think as legislators, we need to look carefully at how we're going to legislate, not just for what's current right now, what looks good right now, but how we're going to be able to afford a program in the future. And in the long term, the affordability of this bill is just not there. So what I would like to see is, as a community, we come together and offer some solutions that are focused around business and have more just a forward-looking, long-term vision of bringing good businesses into the state so that we can expand the job market, so we can get these people into jobs and then ultimately provide health care for them.
Dr. Sprout.
Yes, I believe that there needs to be a transitional health care program between Medicaid and employer-based health care. Let me tell you what I do for a living. I put people on dialysis. I put somebody on dialysis this morning, and I want to tell you that each and every one of those that are in my dialysis unit cost you and I $80,000 a year. Turns out 60% of them, over 60% of them in my dialysis unit are there because they didn't take care of their high blood pressure and they didn't take care of their diabetes. In fact, in many cases, it was not even recognized. What was happening is that those early preventative health care was not applied to those particular individuals. And so I do strongly support a transition from Medicaid, which is to employer-based health care, and it needs to I wouldn't do it exactly this way if I was king, but what I would say is that I do think that preventative health care has to be out there, and what I would usually call the catastrophic health care, or back in the old days, we used to call it major medical. And so those two things need to be applied to those individuals who are making, in essence, somewhere around $28,000 a year for a family, $17,000 for an individual. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Gordon.
I do not believe that a person's economic situation should be the determinant of medical coverage for that person and his or her family. To me, this is a pay me now, pay me later proposition. Providing Medicaid coverage can serve an otherwise underserved population, and we all know, as Dr. Price indicated, how much these things can cost, $80,000 for kidney treatment. For instance, I believe that it would be better to spend $100 now for a person without insurance to have a cavity filled than to spend thousands of dollars later on for restoration or whatever other dental work would be required because he or she did not have that cavity filled for a lesser amount of money. Unless we forget, much of the additional expense ultimately is borne by the general public. When that individual who would otherwise go to see a doctor is now going instead to the emergency room or being instead admitted to a hospital, and he can't or she can't pay, we will pay for that one way or another. I think we need to expand Medicaid as far as we can expand it.
All right, each candidate will have an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal, which they may pass if they so choose. Mr. Tackett, we'll start with you if you so choose.
I just want to say everyone needs compassion. Everyone is important. 40,000 Nebraskans or 100,000. Every one of those people will be represented by one of these candidates that are up here. We have to represent everybody. We might be from one district, but we serve the whole state.
Dr. Michaels.
Well, I would agree with Les that the issues of preventative and catastrophic care are very important. There's no question about that. The unfortunate thing is the Medicaid program that I've worked in for 42 years does not provide individual responsibility for any of that action. They come to me expecting me to fix it, expecting me to take care of it, much like the individual whose father had bypass surgery and after that he lost all interest in controlling his blood sugar or his blood pressure.
Ms. Geist.
I would contend that even when the federal government supports at 90%, that the 10% that the state would have to pick up is unsustainable. And it is compassionate for the moment to take care of those people through government, which, being a conservative, I don't see government as being where we go to provide all of our needs. I would be firm on not expanding Medicaid and work with local communities who provide the service in a private sector manner.
Dr. Spratt.
Yeah, LB 1032 provides for a sunset after 3 years. LB 1032 provides for skin in the game such that patients must pay something every month. LB 1032 also does not spend any new money except for a $500,000 appropriation within the bill, a unique bill. It also provides for the initial investment in this to come from the cash fund, which is our cash reserve fund. So right now it's paid for and it has a sunset in 3 years. I would support the current bill.
All right, we'll move on to our next question. And I'm sorry, a couple more. Mr. Gordon.
I think that we as the community, we as a state, we as people need to do for the least of us what we would want for the best of us. And by best, I don't mean character or otherwise, I'm talking about income. We have people in our community, we have people across our state who simply cannot afford what they need in the way of medical care. To Dr. Spry's point, I think the money is there to pay for it without draining down anything that would otherwise be required, and I think it's the right thing to do. We should do it.
All right, now we will move on to our next question, and that will be from Charlie Brogan. And Dr. Michaels, we'll start with you on this one.
From each of you, if you were in possession of a magic wand, or in the case of Dr. Spry, if you were king, what bill or bills not yet acted on in this legislative session would you most want to see passed and why? And what bill or bills not yet acted on in this session do you most want to see bracketed or killed and why?
Dr. Michaels.
I'm sorry, but I don't do very good on the numbers of all of the bills, but at least the issues for me would be that I would like to see move forward some of the pro-life issues. I think that there's a number of issues that will help protect patients, protect babies, and I think those things need to be moved forward. If there's a single one that I am most adamant about not seeing move forward, it's the idea of physician-assisted suicide. I know it's called by other names, but it really boils down to suicide with a physician helping, and I really don't want to see that one move. I'm not sure it will, but I certainly don't want to see it move.
Ms. Geis?
A bill that I would like to see prioritized that is not currently prioritized is one on lowering personal property taxes on business. We have moved forward a bit in that arena, but I would like to see that go further. And the reason is there are many states around our state that either have eliminated or are working on eliminating business property taxes. And I'm talking personal property taxes, let me make that clear. And I believe what that does is it hurts competition in bringing new businesses into this state. And one of the visions that I have is improving our business-friendly climate so that we can introduce new growing businesses into the state. And so that is a focus that I would have. And then a bill that I would like to not see move forward. I'm sorry, I am just not in favor of expanding Medicaid at this point, so that's one that I would like to see not move forward.
Dr. Spry?
Yes, the one that I would actually like to push for, and it has to do with my public health background, and that is increasing tobacco tax. The tobacco tax, back in the day, almost 13 years ago now, when we last raised tobacco taxes, the teenage smoking rate was somewhere north of 28%. Right after that tobacco tax went into effect, teen smoking actually plummeted down to about 16 to 17%. It's now back to 25 and rising. And so we need that tobacco tax that Senator Gore is proposing. It also has a provision in it that actually decreases property taxes. So I think that's one of my examples of good policy, making good public health, making good tax policy. And so the policy drives the bill, and I think that makes good sense. The ones that I would like to see go away is medical marijuana. I believe that to be a very bad bill. I believe what it does is it decreases the likelihood that the federal government will actually fix the problem by rescheduling the drug from Schedule 1 down to Schedule 2 so that it can actually have research so that I as a physician can understand the dosing and the administration of marijuana to patients who may benefit from it. I don't have any idea how to use it right now, nor how to counsel my patients about it.
Mr. Gore?
Conceptually, I would like to see considered and passed the medical marijuana bill. This may be only one of very few that Mr. Spry and Dr. Spry and I disagree about. However, I think that if it were me, and I had a life-threatening illness that was causing me to go down and down and down, and my family was surrounding me and watching me go down and down and down, and I reached a point where I didn't care if I lived or died. I would prefer to die. I would want that option. I would want to be able to talk to my doctor to find out if it could be really the last step that I was about to take, and there were no other steps without it. So I think that for me personally, that's the way I would stand on that. With regard to by the way, I don't count bills by their number, I count bills by their text and by what they have to say. I'd like to see as I said earlier, something to prop up those of us who don't have the income to do some of the things that they need to do, medical insurance especially. And last but not least, I think we have to look at our school children across the state. Are they being given the education that they need? I believe that they are. I believe our teachers and our administrators are doing the best job possible, but I want to make sure that every child is given an opportunity to succeed to his or her fullest ability.
Mr. Taggart?
Yes, I think the most important issue to me is the expanded Medicaid. And since we've already discussed that, I'll move on to my magic wand. And I would like to see prison reform. I don't think we need more prisons. I think we have enough prisons. I think we need to start getting people who are in prisons out of prison. We need fewer prisoners. Sending somebody to prison destroys a family, destroys a community, and eventually it's going to destroy society. Prisons seem to be a good training ground for hardened criminals, and we really don't need to send people there who don't really belong there. I believe the biblical standard of an eye for an eye, which is fair. It's not two eyes for one eye, it's one eye for an eye. Also, in the New Testament, Jesus said, turn the other cheek. Just because you have the right to punish somebody for something doesn't mean you ought to punish them. There's got to be a time for a pardon, a time for a parole. And the fewer people we have in prison, the more productive our society is going to be. It's going to allow us to save money and lower our taxes.
30 seconds of optional rebuttal. Dr. Michaels, your first chance.
I think I will just pass, other than to say that there's obviously some differences between each one of us. There's a lot more bills all of us could probably go into, but in a minute and a half, you can't just get through them all.
Ms. Geist.
I would just like to iterate that I would be very much against approving medical marijuana. I fear that that's going to be a gateway for recreational marijuana, so that would be something I would be very much against.
Dr. Spratt.
Well, if I were king, I would like to convince my federal colleagues to reschedule that drug, marijuana, from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. That's the central problem here. I've had many conversations with our Washington constituents in the Congress, and that's the problem, but they won't act on it. So if the states keep folding in and doing this, what it does is take pressure off the federal government. That's the wrong approach.
Mr. Gordon.
I'll stand on the position that I took, and I'm not in opposition to the positions the other candidates take.
And finally, Mr. Taggart.
Since medical marijuana is the issue, and I haven't said anything about that, I would think that medical marijuana bill is okay to pass. I'm all for compassion for people. If there's anything that we can do to help people out, to make them feel better, if they have a medical issue, I'm all for that.
Our next question will start with Ms. Geist, and it'll be from Kevin.
Nebraska's minimum wage after the petition drive and vote of Nebraskans is now $9 an hour, increased over the last couple of years. But just last week, the legislature killed a bill that would have raised the minimum wage for tip workers. So if you are in the Nebraska legislature, would you support either an increase in the full minimum wage for all workers or an increase in the tip wage?
It's funny, I was just talking about this with a friend the other day, and one of the things that as a conservative and as a businesswoman, I find frustrating, and I think many of you small business people find frustrating, is when the government gets in and tinkers with all the things that go on in your business. Right now, I believe that the market will bear the best wage that a server or a person, an employee, can earn at that particular business. So I would like for, as legislators, to get out of the business of telling all of business owners how to pay, all the regulations, all of those things. I think what we need to do in this state is open up a business-friendly climate where the legislature doesn't just tinker around the edges and give you a bunch of new rules that you have to follow, but allows you as business owners to make your own decisions. Those that have the best pay for the best workers will tend to get better workers. Those who pay low and don't do well by their employees will not have as great success as another business that does. So for me, and as a conservative, I would not support that bill.
Dr. Spratt.
Yes, the recent increase in the minimum wage that was carried out by petition within the last couple of years, I think is sufficient for right now. That was a call of the people, and obviously I'm going to listen to a call of the people. I would not support doing that in the legislature. I think that the legislature, we need to figure out how to decrease our spending there and to very carefully look at budgets. I think that the examination of budgets and the fiscal notes that we look at, for example, one of the things that I'd really like to see that the legislature do is start following some of the tax expenditures that go on out there. There are many times that the taxes are decreased or abated in certain areas where we don't follow them, we don't track them in the legislature or through our budgetary process. And this is the same thing that happens with minimum wage. Minimum wage is not tracked out there in any, other than federally, it's not tracked within our local state system, and I believe that those kinds of things should be tracked more carefully. I would like to see a more stringent budgetary process. I've had some conversations with our governor about this. He fully believes this. This is something he's believed for quite some time, and I believe he's right. A more strict business-like budgetary management of our state system is clearly in our best interest. And I don't think increasing the minimum wage in the legislature is probably an appropriate and fiscally conservative thing to do.
Mr. Gordon.
I think that it's a given that we all want to earn a living wage, and if elected, I would be willing to explore the proposed legislation on this subject as drafted. I think that for someone who is being paid an hourly wage and is he or she is relying on tips, and the tips aren't there, that person is going to suffer financially, which means their family is going to suffer financially, which means eventually we as a community, as a state, may suffer financially.
Mr. Taggart.
As a general rule, I'm for paying employees as much as you can fairly. You build your businesses based on your employee. They're your most important asset. You hear that all the time, but do you really believe it? Do you really want to pay them what they're worth and show them the wages? And I guess whether it's mandated by government is probably the issue, is whether or not we want to do that. And this one I'd have to investigate a little bit further, but I do believe that paying your employees well breeds success, and we have an agency that we started with helping developmentally disabled individuals, and we do pay our employees very well. And I think we've been successful in the past year since we've been in operation, and it's grown rather well, and we have a lot of people want to work for us, and it's a very difficult job to be in, but we do have people lined up willing to serve because we do pay well and we do take care of our employees.
Dr. Michaels.
From my perspective, I would like to pay my staff what they're worth. Unfortunately, that would bankrupt me because they're worth an awful lot. Many of you may feel the same way. I don't think that this is an area the government should be involved in. I think that the market should be able to drive this, should be able to find people and define people that need, that are good, therefore then pay them well, but not set it up on some sort of arbitrary minimum standard.
All right, 30 seconds rebuttal time if you so choose to use it. Your choice first, Ms. Geis.
I have nothing additional to add.
All right, Dr. Spry.
Nothing to add.
Mr. Gordon. Mr. Taggart.
Yes.
Dr. Michaels.
Yes.
All right, we will go on to the next question, and this will be directed toward Dr. Spry, and Charlie Rowan will be asking this.
Several of you have used the term pro-life. Some people believe pro-life means you oppose abortion. Some people believe it means you oppose the death penalty. Some people believe it means you oppose both. I'd like to have each of you comment on the degree to which you're pro-life or not pro-life with regard to both abortion and the death penalty.
Dr. Spry.
I assume this is sort of like taking your temperature, is that right? So, in my case, as a physician, I've always thought I've been pro-life. In my area, I work in kidney medicine, where I work at the other end of life. I frequently work at the end of life. I do believe that abortion should be available for rape, incest, and the imminent death of the mother. I think that abortion on demand is a failure of medical care. I don't believe we did it right, if that's what has to happen. And so I believe that there should not be the availability of abortion on demand. On the other end of life, I vigorously oppose physician-assisted suicide. I think that's that's the wrong conversation to have with my patient. When I sit down in my room, my exam room with my patient, we have a discussion of what they want, what is bothering them, what do they fear. It's usually the fear that's the problem. And so if we can talk through that, there's ways to get through that at the same time. I do think that the state of Nebraska needs a death penalty. I've read the Joubert decision. I've read some of the Rulo, that court case. Those people are terrible. There are people who deserve to die. Now, as a physician, I could never sign a death warrant because the state knows not to do that. But I certainly believe that the state has every right to have a death penalty. And so I will wait to see what the citizens of Nebraska say, but I would be willing to work in the state of Nebraska to achieve a death penalty regulation.
Mr. Gordon.
With regard to abortion, right to life, our goal should be to do all that we can to prevent unwanted abortions. By that I mean we should have family planning, we should have the resources available for couples to avoid unwanted pregnancy and thereby negate the necessity or the desire for an abortion. I supported then, and I still support today, the United States Supreme Court ruling in waivers and Wade. We've had that for 43 years. It said that abortions should be legal, and they should be allowed, except where the death of the mother is imminent, in which case it should be provided. How to achieve the prevention of unwanted pregnancies will be our focus, and whether or not I'm elected to the legislature, that will continue to be my focus. With regard to the death penalty, I have supported the death penalty for the most heinous of crimes. We all know what those were, going all the way back to Charlie Starkweather, probably within the memory of all of us in this room, or at least the older of us in this room. More recently, we've had the Jubers, we've had Nico Jenkins, we've had several people who simply cannot be allowed to be in our society. Putting them in prison is not the solution. Regardless of the outcome of the public referendum, I believe that the will of the citizens of the state of Nebraska deserves our consideration and our respect. I would call out, though, a couple of things. First-degree murder is the only crime for which the death penalty can be imposed.
Time will let you finish in your rebuttal, Mr. Gordon. Mr. Taggart?
I am pro-life from conception to the grave, and I believe in the quality of life every step along the way. As far as the death penalty, I'm opposed to the death penalty until we can come to a point where we can get it right and do it the right way. We had the Beatrice 6 case where we had people on death row that really shouldn't be there, or in prison for not really being there, and we do get it wrong at times. We don't need to kill people. We can put them in prison for life. There's nothing to stop us from doing that. And there have been studies showing that it costs more to actually carry out the execution than it does to just leave them in prison for life. And I know there was a Robert Williams case back in the 70s where he was left in prison, he became Christian while he was in prison, and then 20 years later we decided to execute him. I think if you're going to do it, you're going to do it the right way. You punish the crime immediately. You don't wait 23 years until they've been reformed and then decide you're going to get around and execute.
Dr. Michaels?
From a pro-life standpoint, I am a pro-life physician from conception to natural death. I think that remains. I know that there's some concern and some debate or question about when the life of the mother is at stake. But as a physician who did obstetrics for about 35 years and who continues to practice, I've never seen a case where that was an actual issue. It might be suggested, but I've never had a case, nor have any of my colleagues to my knowledge. As far as the death penalty is concerned, I think it should be a necessary but rarely used item that's available for the heinous crimes. I think that the issue is that those particular crimes where it is available for are the result of somebody who didn't have a choice in terms of their life being taken. And so therefore, I think that in that situation, the government must have the right and availability to do that. The interesting thing will be to see what our citizens say, and once the citizens have decided, then we will follow that and work forward from that standpoint.
Finally, Ms. Geis.
Yes, I too am pro-life, and just to clarify, I'm pro-innocent life. So I am pro-life except for the life of the mother. And what I mean by pro-innocent life, it makes it consistent then, therefore, to be for the death penalty, only in the worst cases. And I think those who are on death row now in Nebraska are the worst cases. So I feel like that's a consistent argument. I do think it's very important as a pro-life woman that we understand that there's so many services that I would be in favor of to surround those mothers who find themselves in an unfortunate situation where they're carrying a child that they may not want. We have so many wonderful agencies here in Lincoln and around the state that will come around and help those mothers. And I think that's an important focus to have. I'm also very in favor of having the citizens of Nebraska vote on the death penalty. It's a volatile issue and one that I'm glad that we're taking to the people. And as a legislator, I would follow whatever the will of the people is and honor and respect that.
All right, 30 seconds of optional rebuttal. Your option first, Dr. Spratt.
Yes, so I just want to expand on the death penalty. So I also think that the main criticism when I'm walking through my district is that the death penalty is not swift. that we are making families suffer, and I recognize that. And so that's why I said, if the citizens of Nebraska decide that they do want a death penalty, and I would be in favor of that, then what I would do would be try to work with some attorneys, because I don't know anything about the lawyer part of this. I'd like to build some fences around some of the appeals process, and so I think that's important.
Mr. Gordon.
Yes, as long as first-degree murder is the only crime for which the death penalty can be imposed. But it's my understanding that less than 10% of those convicted of first-degree murder are actually sentenced to death in the state of Nebraska. I think in one of the finest, if not the finest debate I've ever seen our legislature engage in, it was the debate about whether or not to repeal the death penalty. They stood up as they felt their finest. So because the current drugs used cannot be used, we have to do it.
All right. Mr. Taggart.
When our governor took office, I was kind of disappointed that this became such an obsession with him that he wanted to make sure he had the process in place to be able to execute people. I guess that kind of concerns me, and that they've taken it to the extreme that they have, where they go out onto the streets and have people getting petitions. And I know that was paid for in large part by the governor and his dad, and I would hope we could do better than that.
Dr. Michaels.
Well, I would agree with Dr. Spry that if the citizens determine that we are going to have a death penalty, then we need to make sure that that death penalty occurs. Once we're assured of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, that we move on it and not spend the next 7 to 10 to maybe even longer years trying to determine what we're going to do or how we're going to do it.
And Ms. Geis.
One of the things that I've heard from the people whose doors I've knocked on is that they are, in my district, quite pro-death penalty, and using that responsibly, which, like I said earlier, I believe we've done well with that in this state. So I would support the people and hearing from the people. I think that's a perfect option for a volatile situation like this. And I appreciate the opportunity that they will have, or we will have to hear from them.
All right, the next question will be from Kevin, and we'll start with Mr. Gordon.
Governor Ricketts has said repeatedly over the last year and a half or so that property tax relief is one of his top priorities, if not his single top priority. The Nebraska Farm Bureau just held a press conference today on the steps of the Capitol urging senators to take action on property tax relief. So the question for you is, do you believe that that's the legislature's place to work toward property tax relief, or would you rather leave that to the local communities to determine if it's wise for their own budget?
I'm in favor of the legislature. I think there is where the debate should be. There is where I think the most, how shall I say, full debate can be heard among the populace of the state, one of which we all are. I don't think we are going to have the voice and that time to have that learned debate on whether or not we should do something about the tax situation. I'm in favor of the government serving the citizens of the state. I would look forward to that opportunity if I were elected. The citizens of the state are not served by wasteful or inefficient government, so I think that's where we may want to look first. If we're going to try to reduce the need for tax, property tax or otherwise. The problem is that we rely too heavily on property taxes in this state. That's my feeling and my belief. I think we have to look at spending. I think we have to look at that other side of the equation. Begin to reduce spending, begin to address spending, and then figure out how to make ways to collect the taxes necessary. There's one other option I think that we should look at. Online sales. Our brick and mortar businessmen and businesswomen in this room are paying taxes on what they sell, collecting taxes, sales taxes on what they sell. Not selling online merchants who are doing the same thing, selling the same product, and doing it online. I think we need to look into that. It might be a federal issue, but one where Nebraska could step up and say, we want this done, because I think we're missing out.
Mr. Taggart.
I would like to see the legislature control that, and I would like to be able to work on that. I consider myself a tax attorney. I would like to see what we can do to get the property taxes under control so that they're fair. I don't think anybody in this room, there probably aren't very many farmers in here, but we all have some of our roots that go back to the farm, but we don't want to see family farms destroyed because they can't pay their taxes. And as speculators come in and you have people buying up land for other uses other than farming, it increases the property values on those farms. And some farmers, especially if crop prices continue to decline, they won't be able to make those payments. So property tax reform is important, and I would like to work with the legislature to see if we can do something about that.
Dr. Michaels.
For me, the issue of property tax relief is part of a broader issue of just looking at tax relief. Because if you say, well, we're going to provide property tax relief, that means we're going to take from somebody some taxes somewhere else, either income or sales, in order to provide that relief. So my concern is that what we're really doing is we are switching from one form of tax to another. I'm not sure that's in the best interest. I think this can be a legislative responsibility overall, but I think the communities, the counties, the educational institutions have to be responsible for the spending and controlling the spending that they're going to do. Because if you're just going to provide more money without any restrictions or any capacity towards that control, all you're going to do is provide more money. And my experience has been that spending more money on a process does not necessarily guarantee a better outcome. So to me, controlling spending would be very important, working with communities for them to control it, and then for the legislature to find the most appropriate and fair way for all of our citizens to pay that tax.
Ms. Geis.
Actually, I applaud the governor's commitment to lowering property taxes. I know all of us going door to door. I can tell you, I've knocked on 8,000 doors, and one of the things that everybody says is lower my property taxes. So I applaud the governor's willingness to step into this. I think it's a good start to talk about lowering property taxes and doing that on the legislative level. I think it needs to be both and, legislative and local. We're perceived as a high-tax state, and one of the things that we can do, and one of the main things that we can do, is open up our state to a more business-friendly climate. So we get more businesses coming in, we broaden the base of who's paying taxes, and add more workers into our workforce. That's the solution to long-term tax relief. I would also say that one of the things I'm also hearing at the doors is when we campaign on saying we're going to lower your taxes or we're going to give you tax relief, and then we go legislate that we're going to pay for all these new programs, our constituents hear us say one thing and do another. And I just want to state that that's not the kind of legislator I would be. That if I say I want to lower property taxes, I will then not vote for those expanded bills.
Dr. Sprung.
Yes, I would reaffirm what the guy said. That is clear to me walking around. The property tax is an issue. Unprompted, when someone answers the door, if I just ask them what they're interested in, it's property tax, just that fast. And so that's why I agree and applaud the governor's efforts to try to decrease that. A central theme of my own campaign is I believe that we should recognize in this state that we call soda pop, sport drink, and candy bars food. I don't think they're food, and I don't think anybody else thinks they're food. And so when I get to that, what I do is, if they're not food, then we shouldn't use food stamps to purchase them, and we also should not, we should not exempt them from sales taxes. And so as such, it's estimated that if I was to be able to rename them as not food, which would be a good public health thing to do, then what happens is that would generate somewhere between $150 and $200 million in order to be able to affect property taxes and offset property taxes. What that does is I would not apply it through the TIOSA formula. I would not use the TIOSA formula to distribute that money, however. What I would do is use it as foundational relief, as a per pupil expenditure on the part of the state, so that we could then hopefully convince local school boards and local county officials to lower those levels.
30 seconds of optional rebuttal. Mr. Gordon, your opportunity first.
Second.
Mr. Taggart.
Well, we're talking about tax here, and we're all just on this earth for a very short time, and it's not a game where we play where we just go about and see who can accumulate the most stuff, and whoever has the most at the end wins. It's a game that where we're we're supposed to be on this earth to help other people, and if I'm elected, that's what I would intend to do, and help people as much as we can.
Dr. Michaels, any rebuttal?
The two things I would say, and I would agree with Les on the food aspects of that, but that also then becomes somewhat of another tax. To me, it's a very positive thing from a public health standpoint to work. The bigger issue to me is still controlling spending.
Ms. Geis?
And I would say that the best way that we can lower taxes in this state is to set forth a long-term vision for how we can bring in more businesses into this state, partner with education so our graduates can take those jobs that the new businesses will bring in, so we can expand the base of who's paying taxes and ease those taxes on all of us.
Dr. Sparrow?
Yeah, I would just expand just a little bit further. In my conversations with both Lincoln Public Schools as well as Waverly, District 145, they clearly ask their school boards to lower the levy. In other words, they give them options out there to do so. And I've talked with both superintendents, and on their budget plans, they actually offer plans to lower those levies. The problem is that the voters out there would like to see the current level of school funding. And so that's where the problem is. We need to decrease that per pupil cost.
All right, we're going to try and finish with one final question before we get to the closings. This will be from Mr. Taggart. Charlie, this is your question.
LB 975, sponsored by Senator Colderman, proposes to protect adoption and foster agencies that refuse to work with same-sex couples. What's your feeling about that bill?
The idea of same-sex couples adopting, I don't have too much of an issue with that. It is kind of difficult for the kids at times not to have a parent of each sex. I do not, I have a state agency that we have ourselves, that we don't discriminate against people for being same-sex. And I guess at the heart of this is the whole same-sex marriage issue, and I am different on this issue, I believe, because I don't think the government should be tracking marriage at all. I don't think there's any purpose for the government to be in the marriage business. Marriage should be between two people and their God and their families, and the families can celebrate. There's no need for our government to say, you have a piece of paper, you can legally live together. I think anybody who knows our society knows that two people can go out and live together anytime they want to, and we don't have the government coming up knocking on the door saying you don't have a piece of paper to allow you to live together. But as far as being able to adopt, I think everybody should be freely able to adopt. Being good parents is the key to that. And just based on whether or not they have the same sex or not, we shouldn't worry about that.
Dr. Michaels?
I think that the literature that I read in the scientific literature says that kids do best when they have a father and a mother. I continue to feel that that very strongly is important. Regardless of who the agency is, those kids will do better if they have both a father and a mother. I think to ask a faith-based agency to violate its own conscience or the conscience of the individuals that run that organization is wrong, and so therefore I could not be in favor of this from the standpoint that I think it's a negative effect for those, to force them to violate their conscience. And number two, I think there's good sound scientific literature that says the best thing for these kids is a father and a mother.
Ms. Geist?
First, I would say that I'm not for discrimination of any kind. But in this case, and the one that Senator Colterman brought forth, the issue is, I think kind of common sense is a religious rights issue. There are 17% faith-based groups who want to follow their sincerely held beliefs. And then there are 83% of the agencies who will adopt to LGBTQ groups. So, in my opinion, there's room at the table for both. However, I think when a group that has a majority and is being served by 83% is asking the 17% to give up their strongly held religious beliefs, is something I could not support. I don't see that as equal, fair rights. So I appreciate the courage that it took for Senator Colton to bring this bill forward, and I would support it.
Dr. Spry.
Yes, I would just make a point. Loving parents are loving parents. And if you have two loving parents, or if you have a loving parent, then that child is much better than in our foster adoption system, foster kid adopt, or the adoption system, or the words of the state. A couple of statistics out there that I've carried with me, and it's been a central theme of my campaign, and that is that 22% of the kids in our foster kids and our wards of the state have more than 4 caseworkers a year. 44% of those kids out there have 3 or more. So that means there is a constant turnover of caseworkers that are going on out there. And these kids are being buffeted about, they're not being followed up. Nebraska has one of the highest removal rates for judges to remove kids from the home. And so expansion of anyone who wants to adopt a child, for me, would be a priority. And so I believe that not only do we need better supervisors of our caseworkers, in fact, I propose increasing the educational requirements for the supervisors of caseworkers, but I also believe expanding anywhere you can where you have a loving parent that will take care of that ward of the state or that foster kid is much better than where they are right now.
Mr. Gordon.
I could not agree more with Dr. Spry's comments if I'd said them myself. The reality is 2 loving parents, regardless of their religious beliefs, regardless of their nature of their relationship, if they are loving parents, if they are kind parents, if they're knowledgeable parents, if they're skilled parents, they should have the right to adopt. And more to my point, that child is deserving of 2 loving parents. Whether we have 2 mothers or 2 fathers, or a father and a mother, or whatever the combination, if they're both there to care for that child, that's when that child should probably be considered for adoption.
All right, opportunity for rebuttal, Mr. Taggart.
I probably should state that I am for the protection of agencies that are faith-based. I do have a faith-based agency. It is Able Incorporated. We help developmentally disabled individuals. We consider ourselves a Christian organization. We tell the people that work for us they don't have to be Christians. The individuals we serve don't have to be Christians, but it's very important that everybody follows the golden rule, and that's what the standard we live by without objection.
Dr. Michaels.
I think the key issue that was mentioned in the question was whether or not those faith-based agencies should be able to maintain their own rights of conscience. To me, that's important. There are other options. It's not that suddenly if we take out the faith-based, we suddenly aren't going to have foster care or adoption agencies. It doesn't eliminate it, just simply says they have the right to continue with their own faith-based beliefs.
Ms. Geist.
And I too was going to bring us back to the point that this is an issue of whether these agencies have to give up their sincerely held religious beliefs. And I think constitutionally, that's one of the tenets our country was founded upon, and I think that's very worth protecting. Their faith compels them to serve by helping foster and adopt children, and I think we need to protect all faith-based organizations.
Dr. Spry.
Nothing further to add.
And Mr. Gordon. All right, we are going to go to our closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds. We do have a new order for that, so just to run it down for you, it'll go Dr. Spry, Dr. Michaels, Mr. Gordon, Mr. Taggart, and Ms. Geist. Dr. Spry, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you. As you've perhaps heard, but as I would like to display for you, I've had a lot of experience in the legislature. I was the chairman of the Nebraska Medical Association Commission on Legislation for almost 16 years. I led that organization and commission, and I also testified in front of the legislature on a frequent basis representing the Nebraska Medical Association. Governor Mike Johanns appointed me to the State Board of Health from 2000 to 2007, so I have a lot of inside information about how the Health and Human Services works. I have a lot of interest in policy and advocacy. I'm not sure I'm much of a manager. I tell people I could never be a governor because I would never sign a death warrant, but I would like to represent you in the 25th District because I believe I'm a policy advocate that can combine not only policy but good legislation for good outcomes. Thank you.
Dr. Michaels.
Thank you. It's been a real privilege, although a little nerve-wracking to be up here, and at the same time, time, I think it's important that you know a little bit about each one of us. I've been married for 47 years. I've lived in the district for the entire 42 years that I practiced family medicine here in the state. I've had the privilege of taking over from Les on the Board of Health, and so I've been on the Board of Health since he left in 2007, which gives me certainly insight into the policy as far as state is concerned. I've served as a volunteer family physician with the legislature through the Nebraska Academy of Family Physicians, which means, although sitting on the sidelines, I've now had an opportunity to watch those senators for the last 33 years and see what they do and or don't do. And I think that gives me some expert opinion. My goal is to represent District 25, but to serve all of the people of Nebraska.
Mr. Gordon.
I came home from Vietnam with a shattered leg and a cane for life, but also came home realizing how much the people of this state mean to me, especially the people with whom I've become affiliated, the people in this room. It's all salt of the earth. I spent 17 months and 6 days in the hospital getting my leg put back together so that I could come home. And I thank God that the surgeons, Dr. Spry, Dr. Michaels, were able to save my right leg. And I appreciate what I've learned during that time. Nebraska's been good to me and my family. I grew up in Lincoln, graduated from the University of Nebraska, got my degree from the College of Law, and built a business, which is my law practice here, and I plan to stay here for the rest of my natural life. I have deep roots in our community. I have deep roots in this state. My maternal grandfather settled in Nebraska in 1885. My father was born here. My mother, many of whom you know, is Sally, the son of Sally, thank you very much, was that beautiful woman who served in the legislature after serving for two governors, Governor Brooks and Governor Morrison, and then as a sergeant at arms in the legislature from the time she was 75 until the time she was just shy of 103rd birthday when we lost her. When I heard that Senator Campbell was term limited, I made a point to go talk to her. I wanted to ask her what it was that she would have done if she had more time, what it was that she would have initiated if she knew that she might have another term. And one of the things I'd like to, just as an aside, maybe what we ought to do is consider 3 terms instead of 2 terms for senators. I think that politics could do what it should do if good people get elected.
Thank you. Mr. Taggart.
Thank you for letting me come here. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you. I'll repeat myself and say that I am independent. I decided to be independent because I don't want to serve a political party, and I've really enjoyed the freedom from doing that. It really was like I can say whatever I want, do whatever I want, and not have to answer to a party telling me I said the wrong thing or didn't go to the right place. I want to have expanded Medicaid passed. I want to work with people to understand the issues that I don't understand, because there's a lot of this stuff that I really don't understand, and I will need help, good staff, and support from everybody here. LIBA is a good organization. They do a lot for a lot of people. The people in here are basically, I would have to say that most people in here are among the wealthier. They're not the poor people that we have in our state. So we have all kinds of people that we need to serve. The people in here are also powerful, and we need to help the weak too. The people are blessed with abilities and with possessions and different things, so that they can help other people, not so that they can have a bag of money and an easy chair and just enjoy life. So as your representative, I would like to serve you the best I can.
Thank you. Ms. Geisen.
As a small business owner, mother, and grandmother, I believe that Nebraska is the best place to live and work and raise a family. And that's why I'm so passionate about running for District 25. And when I'm elected, there are 3 things I'll bring to this office. I am a consistent conservative. I have a common sense business mindset. I also have a vision that's long-term of pairing business and education across the state so we can expand the base of taxpayers in this state. After knocking on almost 8,000 doors, the #1 thing that I've heard from people is that they are so tired of electing someone who campaigns as a conservative and goes to the State House and legislates a completely different way. I'm a conservative, I've always been a conservative, and I'll legislate that way. I will also bring a common sense business mindset to this job. I'm a hard worker, kind of a roll up your sleeves and get dirty kind of person. person. I'll help streamline budgets, and I'll consistently work towards a smaller, leaner budget. I'll also bring forward a vision of growth and education in the community and all across the state. I want to foster a business-friendly climate, one that encourages entrepreneurship and innovation. That way we can partner with education, keep our graduates here in the state when they graduate, so that we can expand the base.
That will conclude our debate for this afternoon, and I want to thank our candidates very much. It takes a lot of courage and sacrifice